Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a focused learner trying to wrap your head around the massive, intricate world of life sciences, well, you've landed in exactly the right spot. Today, we're taking a pretty fascinating journey through the 16 major branches of biology. Think of it like an epic scale of life. We're going to start way down at the invisible, microscopic level, and then build our way all the way up to these massive, complex environments and healthcare systems. By the time we wrap up, you'll have a rock-solid map of how biology is actually organized and why every single piece matters.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. Just to make these 16 branches way easier to digest, we've grouped them into 5 logical themes: microscopic blocks, form and growth, classifying life, organisms and environment, and finally, applied bio and health. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. The microscopic building blocks.
We're kicking things off at the absolute smallest scale, the invisible stuff that literally builds every living thing on this planet. Cell biology, which you might also hear called cytology, is the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about today. Since the cell is the absolute fundamental unit of life, this branch figures out how they grow, divide, and keep us alive. Whether it's a plant cell, an animal cell, or those tiny little organelles buzzing around inside them, cytology is where the whole story begins.
Now, once you've got those individual cells, they start teaming up to form tissues, and that brings us to histology. Basically, if you're staring at muscle, blood, or plant tissues under a microscope to figure out how they're built and how they work, you're doing histology. But wait, what's actually telling those cells what to do? Right, genetics. This branch is all about the biological instruction manual, genes, heredity, and variation. It's the science of exactly how traits, like, say, your eye color or your blood type, are handed down directly from parents to their kids.
Moving on to theme 2, form, function, and growth.
All right, let's zoom out from the microscope for a second and look at whole organisms. How are their bodies actually put together? Now, people mix up morphology and anatomy all the time, but the difference is actually super simple. Morphology is strictly about the outside, the external, visible stuff. The gorgeous shape of a butterfly's wing or the broad leaves on a mango tree, that's morphology. Anatomy, on the flip side, is all about the inside. If you have to open something up to see how it's arranged, like the human heart, the lungs, or even the inner workings of a flower, you're looking at anatomy.
Now, anatomy tells us what the parts are, but physiology tells us what they actually do. It asks the big question, how does this thing work? Physiology studies the active mechanics of living systems. So knowing you have a heart is anatomy, but understanding exactly how that heart pumps blood throughout your entire body, or how your kidneys act as this incredible built-in filtration system, that is pure physiology.
And then we have embryology, which basically tracks how those anatomical structures get built in the first place. It's the step-by-step science of how an organism develops. It literally starts from step 1, a single fertilized egg, a zygote, and maps out every single crazy stage of growth until you have a fully complete individual. A classic example of this in action is observing the continuous day-by-day development of a little chick growing inside an egg.
Section 3. Classifying life and history.
So once we understand how individual organisms function and grow, how on earth do we organize all this wild diversity? Well, we rely on 2 distinct branches. Taxonomy is how we identify, name, and group living things today based on their similarities and differences. Whenever you hear humans officially classified as Homo sapiens, that is taxonomy at work. But what about the creatures that aren't around anymore? That's paleontology. This branch looks deep into the past, studying fossils, like dinosaur bones, to help scientists piece together the massive evolutionary history of life on Earth.
Section 4. Organisms and their environments.
Stepping even further back, let's look at the bigger picture. How do living things interact with the physical world around them? Environmental biology is, well, it's incredibly relevant right now, right? It studies the complex relationship between organisms and their environment. And this isn't just about animals interacting with other animals. It's how they deal with the air, the water, the soil. For instance, when researchers are trying to figure out exactly how water pollution is impacting local fish populations, they are actively applying environmental biology.
Now, out in nature, there are also some really specific, frankly fascinating types of interactions. Sociobiology is all about group dynamics, how animals cooperate and live in complex societies, like the mind-blowing organization you see in honeybees or ants. Then, on a slightly darker note, you've got parasitology. This studies the one-sided, disease-causing relationships where parasites live on or inside a host. Think tapeworms, or the Plasmodium parasite that causes malaria. And finally, entomology.
Insects are so incredibly abundant and important that they get their own entire branch, dedicated strictly at classifying and studying everything from tiny mosquitoes to butterflies.
And finally, Section 5, Applied Biology and Health.
So, how do we actually use all this biological knowledge to keep ourselves healthy? It really comes down to two fundamental pillars of medicine. Immunology is all about our internal defense. It studies the immune system, how our bodies naturally fight off infections and build immunity. This is the exact science that gave us life-saving vaccinations for things like polio and measles. Pharmacology, on the other hand, is about external help. It's the study of drugs and medicines. It looks at how everyday antibiotics like penicillin or common painkillers like paracetamol actually work in the body, their uses, and of course, their side effects.
And that brings us perfectly to our final branch, biotechnology. This is where biology meets pure tech, and it's a total game changer. It's all about using living organisms to create products that directly benefit humans. Take insulin, for example. By genetically modifying bacteria, biotechnology essentially turns these microscopic living organisms into tiny little factories that pump out life-saving insulin. It's genuinely miraculous stuff.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a question to ponder. We've gone from the invisible, microscopic world of cytology all the way up to the global stakes of environmental biology. These 16 branches, they're not just boring textbook terms to memorize for a test. They are the actual powerful tools we use every single day to understand, protect, and literally shape the future of our world. So, out of all these incredible fields, from developing medicines to saving ecosystems, which branch of biology will shape your future? Thank you so much for learning with me today, and keep exploring.